Hi, you're listening to Book Chat with author Vivian E. Moore.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
Hello and welcome to Book Chat. I am your host, Dr. Vivian E. Moore. Hope everyone had a great week, and I hope that you're having an even better weekend. All right, we're going to get straight to today's show. The title is, Why Does It Have to Be So Complicated? And the topic is, why authors simplify their words to reach a broader audience. Well, when you pick up a book, an article, or a blog post, you're not usually hoping to decode a puzzle of unfamiliar words, right? You want to understand, and more importantly, to connect. That's exactly why many authors choose to simplify their language, because communication is most powerful when it's clear, accessible, and universal. Okay? So we're going to talk about the importance of using words that everyone can understand. Okay? Because, in everyday language, we don't use complicated phrases or overusing words that are, so high up that most people, they can't grasp an understanding of what you're even talking about, because it's like you're talking above them, and that's not necessary for communicating. Okay, whether it's talking every day, speaking with people, or reading a book. Okay, so that's why we're going to talk about the importance of using words that everyone can understand, because language is meant to be a bridge and not a barrier. Okay, so when authors pack their writing with jargon, because you see that in a lot of books, and over academic terms, especially if it's not something that's dealing with academics or something that's dealing with a medical dictionary or anything along those lines, or even all of those long-winded phrases. What they do is they run the risk of shutting people out. Okay. And we never, ever want to do that. We want to make our writing inclusive. Okay. So on a level to where everyone can understand. If they can read, then they can understand. Okay. Because readers, they may feel excluded or just overwhelmed once that happens. And we do not want to do that. Because once that happens, the message is lost, and we never want to lose people. We want to gain their attention and keep their attention all the way through the book. Okay, so and on the other hand, when writers when they choose those words that everyone can understand, they open the door wide. Okay, there's enough room for everyone to enter, and that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that everyone is accessible, okay? Because a simple sentence, it can carry just as much weight and emotion and power as a complex one, right? So sometimes even more. But the point of writing, it isn't to prove how big a vocabulary someone has. It's to make an idea land, okay? I've had conversations with people, and I call it overcompensation. They want to prove how smart they are, how intelligent they are, when you can just simplify the conversation. Okay, because it's we're not trying to impress anyone, first and foremost. Okay, we're not trying to impress you with how many words we know, how many big words we can use in a sentence. To me, that's overkill. Keep it simple. And on a level to where everyone can understand, because we don't want to shut people out of conversations. We don't want to shut people out of, reading books. We want to make sure that, even a child on a certain grade level can read this book, and as a matter of fact, when we are getting ready to publish our books, there is a standard for, what level does this book consist of? Is it recommended for people with a, with the sixth grade understanding? Is it higher? Is it higher than than a middle grade book, and that would be for children, or is it on a level to where even an adult that may not be high on the academic scale can still read this book, can still understand what's going on in this book? So that's very important, and it's just something that that every writer, if you're writing a book and you're not trying to eliminate people from reading it, then you want to make it readable for any adult that can read and can understand. Okay, because that is so important, to never ever eliminate people from your work, because you want to bring on as many as you possibly can. Okay, so the first thing is why simplicity works is that it builds trust. Okay, because readers are likelier to stick with writing that feels like a conversation rather than a lecture. Okay, so if you're not sitting in a classroom, listening to a lecture, you most definitely don't want that when you're reading a book. And the second thing is that it is inclusive. So we just talked about that, because, clear language, it ensures people from different backgrounds, ages, or education levels can still share the experience, because we never want to exclude anyone. We want to bring everyone on board so they can read our books, understand our books, depending on their age, because, there are age appropriate books that are out there. But, we're talking about books that is on an adult level. But, even if you're a kid and you can read, then, if the book is appropriate, then they can read it as well. So we want to keep it simple. Okay. And the third thing is, it makes ideas memorable. People, they remember those short, sharp, everyday words more than the dense technical ones. Okay. So if that isn't necessary in your writing, then why add it? Keep it simple for everyone so they can understand exactly what's going on, because it does matter. It really does matter. And the fourth thing is, it creates impact. We want to be impactful in all that we do. And, just think of some of history's most famous speeches. They are powerful because they are plain spoken. Okay. And not because they're complicated. If we think about some of those amazing speeches that were given by some of history's most famous people, we remember that. We remember certain words in those speeches because they were so impactful, not because they were so complicated, but because they were plainly spoken and they were memorable because of that reason. Okay, so that's what we want to do as writers. We want to make sure that that we keep it simple, that we keep the speech plain so everyone can understand. There is nothing that I hate more is a book with so many difficult words in it that maybe I get it, but then someone else may not get it, and I'm like, why are these words even being used when the story is not all that complicated? So why do you need all of these complicated words in a story that that is so simple? So I don't understand that. And I understand that as a writer you want to impress your audience, and that's okay. But impress them with how you're writing the story, the details of the story, the characters in the story, That's how you want to impress them, not with using difficult words that they have to stop reading just to go look up, or Google it to see what it means. Okay. If it's a thriller, if it's a science fiction type of story or something of that nature, then of course you're going to have words in it that, maybe the average person wouldn't understand or maybe hadn't heard before, or if it's something that's dealing, with medical terminology and things of that nature, then of course, you're going to have words in that story that are dealing with those type of terminology. So yes, you will have to go and look that up to see what it means. Maybe, not while you're reading the story, but perhaps, you can jot it down and then afterwards. But if you want an understanding of what you're reading, what the story is truly about, then yes, of course, then you may have to stop reading just to Google that word to see what it means. So that way you have a full understanding of what the message is in the story, what's been talked about in the conversation. So of course, you want to understand. So, along those terms, you can understand having technical words because we're reading a book that's dealing with, with a technical landscape. So that's supposed to be there. But if it's just if it's a romance novel, if it's fantasy or something like that, you don't have to have all of those complicated words mixed into the story just to show how, just how educated you are. Because guaranteed, if you are a great writer, the reader is going to get it without you having to add in all of those extra things just to make the story seem more, more powerful for you, but less enjoyable for the reader. And we never want to do that because we are writing for the readers because we want them to read what we write. Okay. Writing for connection is more important than confusion. Okay. So you want writing for connection, not confusion. All right. So, every author should ask the question, do I want to impress or do I want to connect? Because impressing someone with a complicated vocabulary, it may spark admiration, but connecting with someone through clear words, it creates understanding, empathy, and loyalty. So the next time you're writing, whether it's a story, an essay, or even a quick email, pause and ask yourself, does it really have to be so complicated? Because the truth is, the strongest writing isn't the hardest to read. It's the kind that welcomes everyone in. All right, guys, that is the show for today. And I hope that you found what we talked about today not complicated, not confusing in any type of way, because that's the idea, to make sure that that everyone can understand. And I would appreciate that if you would listen, like, and share, because that is so important to this podcast. And I appreciate everyone who downloads on a weekly basis. Okay. And as I always say before I end every episode, remember to tell those who you care about the most how you feel about them today, because tomorrow is not promised and it may be the only chance you get to say it. So on that note, I love you. I hope you love me back. And until the next time you hear my voice, God bless you and goodbye.
Loved what you've heard on this week's episode? Well, the answer is simple. It would mean the world to us if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star review and feedback. Spreading the word really is the best way to grow our podcast and achieve even greater things. Thank you.